What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Stokastic DFS channel. And today we're talking college football DFS. We'll be talking the Thursday two-game slate. It is November the 10th and weekday football. You got to love it. Before we get started, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you guys today by Prize Picks. And if you've never heard of Prize Picks, they are daily prop-based offerings. You're making lineups. You can use up to 5 players, and it's player props. It's passing touchdowns. It's receiving yards. All of the statistical categories you know and love. And it's not just NFL. It's not just college football. There's NBA, NHL. They have a ton of sports, and you can mix and match in your entries. You can mix an NFL line with an NBA line, and it is no problem. And great deal for you guys. If you click the link in the video description below, you're going to get a first match deposit bonus up to $100 and 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. So make sure to check out Prize Picks. Let's dive into the slates. We've got a 2-gamer on a Thursday. And here's our data usage tool. You can see kind of behind the scenes here. Up at the top, it's all the sort of game environment metrics, pace, pass rate, offensive line, defensive line interactions, Vegas data, and where these defenses allow production. But let's dive into the 2 games. First game is Tulsa taking on Memphis. This is a 6.5-point spread, 61.5 total here. Memphis being the favorite. And both these teams are really fast. Tulsa 19th in pace, Memphis 24th. Both these teams have essentially the same pass rate. They're both at 50.8%, crazy enough. On the Tulsa side, we've got one big injury to monitor here in Davis Brin. No update to his status during the week, but he missed last week's game after getting injured. The offense is very different with and without him. Brin is a pocket passer, negative 71 rushing yards on the year, but he averages 262 on 30 attempts, so pretty good efficiency here for Davis Brin. We don't know if he's playing. If he does play, I would certainly have interest in stacking him. We'll talk about all the quarterback options on the board here, but I think I'm probably ranking the Tulsa quarterback third regardless if it's Brin or their backup, Braylon Braxton, who's at 5,700. Both of them are pretty affordable. And the offense didn't change too much with Braxton in there. Braxton, he's not the passer Brin is, but he's more mobile. He has 88 cumulative rushing yards. And he's barely played this year. So they're just different styles of quarterback, but I think they are swappable. You could just put Brin in your lineup and then swap down to Braxton. He's only 500 cheaper. And on FanDuel, they're the same price. So I kind of like this situation. I think it's not going to be played enough. In the backfield, Steven Anderson's missed the last 2 games. Don't expect an update to his status. Whether he plays or not, I think Deneric Prince is ahead of him at this point. I think Anderson is more or less a change of pace. And if he's out, you'll just see Jordan Ford and Bill Jackson handle those change of pace touches. Fully expecting Deneric to continue his pseudo bell cow workload. 90 rushing yards per game for Deneric Prince. He's averaging 16.5 touches per game. So he is solid. I think one of the better running back plays. The receiving game is a big focal point of this offense. They're running a lot of 4 wide sets, which Brin being in there would give a little bit more life to these receivers, but I'm going to play a lot of them anyway. Keelan Stokes and Juan Carlos Santana are the 1 and the 2. Stokes averages 107 yards per game, 9.6 targets per game. Efficiency dropped with Braxton for sure, but I think he has the safest target share on the board today, 28.7%. Maybe you could argue a Georgia Southern receiver does, but we'll get to that team in a little bit. Juan Carlos Santana is the wide receiver 2 here, 7.9 targets per game, 68 yards. I would rather just find the salary to give up to Stokes on DraftKings. On FanDuel, their salary gap is a little wider, so I think you could make the argument over there. But I definitely prefer Stokes on DraftKings if you can find the salary. And then Epps is the last receiver that has a full-time role. Isaiah Epps, he's 5K. He's going to be out there almost every single play here. And he's averaging 6.1 targets per game, 40 yards. Malachi Jones is the guy they use when they're 4 wide, which is a lot of the time. So he's certainly viable. Then they'll use Ethan Hall as a tight end. So I think Epps is the better price-adjusted play than Juan Carlos Santana, all things considered. And then if we look to routes for the last game, just to show you the difference between Malachi and Hall, Malachi Jones said 65% of the routes last game. Ethan Hall was at 32. So certainly prefer Malachi if you're going all the way down. On Memphis, again, 51% pass rate, 24th in pace. It's a good offense. Seth Hennigan, I think, is the number one signal caller on the board. He's mobile. He is 287 rushing yards, and a lot of people don't consider him mobile. He is 279.5 passing yards per game on 35 attempts. He is a great floor. The issue is stacking him. We'll skip over running back for the moment and talk receiver for this team. Holy smokes, has it been tough to evaluate this year for Memphis. It's been a revolving door, and it's likely going to be a rotation moving forward to some degree. So stacking, it's hard. Last week, we had Eddie Lewis pop back up. It was a 58% route rate the week prior, and it jumped to 77% again in the most recent game, which is positive. But again, volatile here. He had three straight games, below 60% of the routes, then he jumps back up to 77%. The most consistent player is Caden Prieskorn, their tight end. He's a 78% route rate this year. It's seldom dropping below 70. He looks safe. So Lewis looks a little more volatile. I think the second most consistent receiver here is actually Javon Ivory. His route rate pretty consistently above 70%. So in a 1-for-1 situation, I honestly think I would rather just pay down for Ivory instead of Lewis, even though the targets on the year favor Lewis. But it's not by much. I mean, Lewis is 52, Ivory is 49. And then Prieskorn, I think he's the safest, but you're still paying for him at 6,200. That's quite a bit. From there, let's just go down the route tree. Gabriel Rogers, 54% of the routes. Joe Skates, 73%. And then the rest, it's just crumbs left over for like your Rock Taylors, your Kobe Drakes. But Joe Skates is playing more than Gabriel Rogers each of the last 3 games now. I think Skates has moved ahead of Rogers in terms of the wide receiver 3. The prices are converging here. But as you can see, Skates has at least 4 targets in 3 straight games. Rogers has been a lot more up and down in that span. I think if I'm punting, it's going to be Ivory 1, Skates 2. Tough receiving game to get to. In the backfield, this situation is kind of a mess. It's going to be a timeshare regardless. I believe Brandon Thomas got injured in their most recent game, so just watch his status. But whether he plays or not, you're going to see Jevion Ducker. You're going to see Asa Martin. When someone's hurt, they involve Sutton Smith too. So just know that this is a pretty nasty rotation across the board for all of these receivers, or really these runners and receivers. You could use both. Just trying to get some confirmation on the Memphis situation before we move on, because that was off the top of my head. But we will see. Yep, Brandon Thomas left in the 4th quarter with a head injury. So watch his status. Georgia Southern takes on Louisiana in the second game of the night. Another pretty good game overall. 61.5 total, 3.5 point spread in favor of Louisiana. Both these teams play different offenses, I'd say. I mean, they're kind of converging a little bit. Georgia Southern runs the air raid. They're 11th in pace, 61% pass rate. Louisiana Lafayette is above average in pace too. They're 40th, and they actually pass the ball about 52% of the time, which is much more than normal. Starting with the Georgia Southern side, this team running the air raid is going to have Kyle Van Treese at quarterback. He's essentially a walking 300-yard bonus because he averages 46.5 pass attempts per game. That's 331 yards per game for Van Treese. Just only 38 rushing yards. At least it's not negative. So Van Treese is somewhat solid here. Tough matchup for him. Louisiana is really good at pass defense, but I'm not sure it matters. They're going to run like 4 wide regardless. In the backfield, Jalen White, Gerald Green form a 1-2 punch at running back. It's about a 70-30 split, maybe an 80-20 split in favor of White. And he's the best pass catcher they have in the backfield too. He averages 3 targets per game. So White, I think, is certainly viable at this price. Game script kind of dictates how many touches he sees. 2 games ago, he had 30 carries. Last game, he had 10. In the receiving game, we have Derwin Burgess, Caleb Hood, and the wide receiver 3 is something we'll talk about here. So Burgess, the 1, 96 targets in the year, 10.8 per game, 71 yards. Prefer Stokes in a vacuum, but Burgess is way cheaper. So this is the nuance I wanted to bring up. Prefer Burgess overall if you can't find the salary for Stokes, but Caleb Hood's also not expensive either. He's seen more targets in the last 4 games than Burgess, but I mean, you can't really go wrong with either of these receivers. And Caleb Hood actually has more yards than Burgess on the year too, 681 to 642. Just that target difference on the year, you've got Burgess with more. He's also 4,900 compared to 57. I think you're probably playing one, if not both of these guys. The wide receiver 3 had been Amari Jones. He suffered a season-ending injury. The wide receiver 3 in his place was Jeremy Singleton. He went down with an injury last week. Now, Singleton is questionable here. We do not know if he plays. It was called a low ankle sprain, and they didn't put him in a walking boot or anything like that, so I'm guessing Jeremy Singleton plays. If he does, he's very clearly the wide receiver 3 here. Prior to last week's game where he went down just 18% of the routes into the game, the week prior he was at 96%. So that is something to certainly watch here, but fully anticipate him being the 1. I guess I should say the 3, not the 1. And then for whatever reason, if he's out, expect Marcus Sanders to step up. Marcus Sanders jumped up to an 83% route rate with Jeremy Singleton going down. So that is definitely something to note. This team will rotate tight ends. So usually that's going to be JJ McAfee combined with Bo Johnson. They'll use 4 wide a decent amount here. So I'm not trying to really get to a lot of tight ends. I would rather play like Marcus Sanders over those guys. But hopefully that's a comprehensive breakdown of the receivers. There's min price guys here. Marcus Sanders at 3K. I think he's viable whether Singleton plays or not. But in a 1-for-1 situation, Singleton at the stone, man, if he plays, is better play. All right. Louisiana. Chandler Fields got hurt earlier this year. That has put Ben Wooldridge into a starting role. Wooldridge is hurt himself, but allegedly he's going to play through it. He has pretty good mobility, 149 yards on the year. It's okay. Low volume passing attack, but Wooldridge has been really streaky. He has 9 turnover-worthy plays in the last 2 games, but the efficiency for him is actually pretty good outside of the turnover-worthy plays. So Wooldridge is dicey. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets benched at any point in time, which is why I think he's number 4 on the list of QBs you want to target today. But he's still playable. You can play him in tournaments without a doubt. In the backfield, they've recently returned Chris Smith, which is positive. He's the leader of a committee that will also feature Terrence Williams. Interestingly, both Jacob Caboti and Draylen Washington did not appear in their last game, which condensed opportunities for Chris Smith and Terrence Williams. You also saw Zylan Perry handle a couple carries. It's Chris Smith or pass for me. I think he's fine, especially on FanDuel where he's a little cheaper. The receiving game, Michael Johnson's the only one with a consistent role here. He's now seen 19 targets in the last 2 games. I still would rather play the cheaper Georgia Southern receiver, so he's probably going to be an opportunity cost guy for me where I just leave him out because I'd rather play cheaper guys with better target volume. But the volume's there for him. This game is a really good environment, so I would expect him to at least have a pretty good role. And the rest of this team is a rotation. You're going to see Errol Rogers, Peter LeBlanc, John Stevens, Dante Fleming. Tight ends, you'll see Johnny Lumpkin, Pierce Michael, Neil Johnson. They all rotate. If I'm taking a stab on someone who's not Michael Jefferson, it's going to be number 1, Peter LeBlanc, number 2, Errol Rogers, and then I'll go to Neil Johnson after that. But that'll do it for today's slate. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. If you have any questions, for sure, let me know. If you have any questions, absolutely, and any thoughts. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. You can find me on Twitter at Matt_Gajeski. And hit the thumbs up button on the way out. It helps us a ton. Thank you if you've already done that. But we'll be back tomorrow for the Friday slate. Until then, we'll see you guys next time.